Hello, I am Xarkun. This is World of Warships Legends. Today, I've got a look at the Tier 7 Premium German cruiser Siegfried, which is the reward ship for this ongoing campaign in February of 2021. I've got my mod selection appearing on the screen. We'll take a look at my commander build after this, as well as the armor viewer before we jump into some gameplay. And I do have a pretty good game for you guys. As far as my mod selection on this ship goes, we've got the turret traverse mod in the first slot, steering gears in the second, concealment in the third, and the main battery reload mod in the fourth, which I think is a pretty good mod selection for this particular super heavy cruiser, or battle cruiser I suppose you could call it. As far as my commander, I've chosen Gunther Lutyens with Norm Scott and Gunichi Mikawa as inspirations. You can see I've built into turret traverse with Ingenious, as well as rudder shift and some damage reduction for a little bit of extra survivability, which is good, along with the armor here. You can see the Siegfried has a 26mm bow and stern, which means both of them can be overmatched by 15 and 16-inch guns, meaning you do need to play this super heavy cruiser a bit carefully. The side armor, however, you can see we've got 90mm plating all along the side and 190mm at the waterline, along with 30mm on the deck. This section of the ship can bounce 15 and 16-inch guns if properly angled. You just have to get the shots to actually hit there, which is easier said than done. As far as the Citadel, you can see that it does sit above the waterline, but it is protected in this casemate armor scheme by a turtleback, which is kind of hard to see, and you wouldn't know it if you didn't know it was already there. You can see that the plates on the bottom of the casemate armor sort of slope up to create a turtleback around the Citadel, and it looks like the actual turtleback plates are probably, I think, 30mm, which means they can't be overmatched by 15 or 16-inch guns, but I don't really know how effective this turtleback is against battleships. Certainly against other heavy cruisers shooting AP into the broadside, this turtleback is going to be fairly beefy. Now we're going to jump into the gameplay and talk about the stats on the Siegfried right off the bat. 55,000 hit points, which is the highest at the tier, and 22% torpedo reduction, which is very good for a cruiser. But the main factor, the main draw of this ship, and excuse any noise you hear in the background, my cat is running around like a maniac, and I don't know what he wants, can't get him to stop. Anyway, 6 380mm or 15-inch guns in 3x2 turrets, 2 super firing forward and 1 aft, sort of like the turret setup of the Gneisenau, and in fact the same gun caliber as a Gneisenau. This is truly a cruiser with battleship caliber guns, following in the succession of the Alaska and the Azuma before it. However, I think this ship is quite a bit better than the Azuma. The guns on my build with Lutyens have 16.2 kilometer range, a 24-second reload, 26.5-second turret traverse. HE shells do a maximum of 4,400 damage with a 34% fire chance, and 11,977 maximum damage with the armor piercing, which is basically German battleship numbers, analogous to the Gneisenau and Bismarck and Tirpitz and all of those. These are typical German battleship caliber guns on a cruiser. For the record, it also has 14 128mm secondaries with a 5-kilometer range that you probably shouldn't spec into, but they do a tiny bit of, let's say, damage amplification if you can get this ship into brawling range. Speaking of which, if you can get the ship into brawling range, it comes with 8 torpedoes in 2 quad launchers, one on either side of the ship, They have a 90-second reload, do 13,700 max damage, 6-kilometer range, 65 knots in the water, basically like Tirpitz torpedoes. Speed on this ship, 34.8 knots on my build, 880-meter turning circle, which is pretty wide, but a 9.5-second rudder shift with this Luchin's build, and I think that is probably essential for this ship. Concealment, 11.1 kilometers detectability by sea. Now, as far as how you play this ship, it is a cruiser with battleship caliber guns, but very light battleship armor. Because the bow can be overmatched, you do have to play this carefully, and I think you probably want to play it at range for the start of the game, unless you can get opportunities to move in close. Now, the friendly destroyer here has set a smoke screen, which, since I stopped firing my guns, is concealing me from this division composed of a Gneisenau and 2 Bayerns. Bit of a failed division that probably shouldn't have taken to sea, since it now finds itself in a Tier 7 match. They're pushing into this cap very aggressively, and basically me and the friendly destroyer are the only ones in a position to do anything about it. You can see my secondaries are firing at the Gneisenau, and they have started a fire, which I believe he extinguished. Good for me. Shooting at his broadside with the 15-inch guns, you can see they get battleship-like results, provided all the shells hit. These guns aren't super accurate, but the torpedoes with their large alpha strike, not quite enough to totally finish off the Gneisenau, but the flooding or this fire, again set by my secondaries, does finish him off. That just leaves the 2 Bayerns in front of us, and essentially they stand no chance. Now, this Bayern can overmatch my bow, which is why I'm presenting this steep angle, sort of baiting his shells into the side. And you can see when they hit that side armor, they do shatter or ricochet and do minimal damage. It's actually his secondaries, I think, hitting the lightly armored superstructure, of which there is a lot, that is doing a lot of damage. Now, turning here with the excellent rudder shift and launching the torpedoes at the Bayern, he's on low enough health that they're enough to finish him off. And just like that, we only have the final remaining Bayern in front of us, who we should be able to finish off with the guns by aiming up into his superstructure. So you can see this opening move in the Siegfried has been very successful. This is all about timing, however, and if you push like this very aggressively at the start of a battle into a lot of enemy ships, you will be taken down very quickly, especially if there are battleships shooting at you, because again, pretty much any battleship you run into with the Siegfried is going to overmatch your bow, apart from things like the King George, the Scharnhorst, and the Odin. Those can't overmatch your bows, and you can bully them pretty successfully. But battleships with 380mm guns and 406 or 403mm guns, whatever it is, 15 and 16-inch guns, they can overmatch your bow armor. Now, the Siegfried does come with German sonar, much like the Hipper and Prinz Eugen, I suppose. I think it has a 5.3 kilometer spotting range for enemy ships, so if you use it to push into smoke screens like this, you will be able to spot enemy destroyers from further away, and of course detect any torpedoes that might be coming toward you. Although this ship is really not that effective against destroyers. It's much more like a fast, lightly armored battleship than it is a cruiser. The only thing that it's got going for it against destroyers is it's more maneuverable than your typical battleship, with the excellent rudder shift time that I've built into, and it's got the sonar to spot them in smoke screens and give you advanced warning of their torpedoes. But this ship is much more effective at dealing with cruisers and battleships, really. There isn't a cruiser in the game that it's going to face who can probably effectively deal with it, and it's going to overmatch the bows of many cruisers at Tier 6 and Tier 7. I think I spoke a little bit about the gun accuracy. I feel like it is slightly more accurate than your typical German battleship, but it is decidedly less accurate than your typical cruiser. You are going to get that infamous wonky German dispersion from time to time, and you do only have 6 guns, so the lack of accuracy does kind of hurt it. Nevertheless, we are able to punch that Algeries Citadel and take him out of the battle for our 4th kill of the game. We're up to 148,000 damage done, and there are only 3 enemy ships left. We're going to see an example of how this ship stands up to 16-inch guns coming up here soon, which is why I chose this game to use for this first impressions review. Now, I suspect that a lot of people are going to have a hard time playing this ship, and a lot of people are going to think it's not good, and that boils down to that 26mm bow plating. If this thing had 27mm of bow plating, which I think it does on the PC, or at least it has more than 26mm, I think. I might be wrong about that, but I think they nerfed it to bring it into Legends at Tier 7. But if it had 27mm and could stand up to 15-inch guns like the Hipper and the Prinz Eugen, I think it would be a better ship that is easier to use, but as it stands, the 26mm bows make it a little trickier. Was hoping to pick up the kill on that Atago out there for the Kraken, but it doesn't end up happening. Now this Vladivostok in front of me, completely capable of overmatching my bow, and this is why I spec'd into the rudder. You can see we turn, and we get his shots to hit the side armor where they shatter or ricochet harmlessly. That is what you need to try to do if you are facing a battleship with 15 or 16-inch guns that can overmatch you. They can shoot at your bow, which is fine, but what you want to try to do is turn so that their shells hit your angled side armor and ricochet off. We're going to try it again here, and we get a little bit less success in that turn. One of the shells hits us somewhere where it can pen, and does 4,500 damage, which in the grand scheme of things is not a lot, but since we have this Vladivostok right in front of us, and we do have to sort of maintain a steady course, we are vulnerable to torpedoes, which are incoming from the last remaining enemy destroyer, Le Fantasque, and we eat 2 of them, which is not good, but it's also not enough to kill us, because of the Siegfried's decent torpedo damage reduction, at least for a cruiser. The Vladivostok is pulling behind this island now, so we are going to be safe from his guns, and that is going to allow us to hopefully deal with this Le Fantasque, who is somewhere behind this island. We've turned the sonar on now, although it's a bit too late, and we have a plane flying in the air in case Le Fantasque decides to shoot at us again. Now we've secured the Alpha Cap, and the friendly Benham is securing the Bravo Cap here. Unfortunately, we're going to see the maneuverability, or lack thereof, of the Siegfried come into play now. Le Fantasque comes around the corner. We are very close to this island. We misjudge our shot there, forgetting that Le Fantasque is a very quick little destroyer, and so we don't lead him enough and completely miss him. Trying to see if we can't get the torpedoes on target against the Vladivostok, and we can't. And unfortunately, Le Fantasque launches a fatal torpedo salvo our way. Gonna try to hit him with the main guns before we get taken out, and the results aren't great. Only 1 over penetration. Le Fantasque takes us out, but that just leaves him and the Vladivostok versus 3 friendly ships. Vladivostok is in trouble. The Benham is able to take him out with a torpedo strike, and the game is essentially wrapped up. Le Fantasque is not going to be able to win against my 3 remaining teammates, and we are going to sail off to victory in the Siegfried. As far as my closing thoughts on the ship, it's not the easiest ship to play, and that 26mm bow plating is a significant handicap when it comes to fighting enemy battleships. So I think probably what you need to do is treat the Siegfried like it is a much more lightly armored Gneisenau, Scharnhorst, Tirpitz, Odin, any of the German battleships with torpedoes that want to get in close and brawl. Obviously, the meta of sort of sniping battleships and sniping HE spamming menaces isn't particularly friendly to German battleships that like to push in. They can get taken down very quickly, particularly if they go out guns blazing in the beginning of the battle. So you do want to hang back and use the range on your guns to, I guess, search for broadside battleships and cruisers, and try to land some 15-inch shells into their broadside, hopefully get Citadel damage. You'll be surprised at sometimes how accurate these 6 turrets on the Siegfried can be. I've taken shots against Massachusetts, broadside Massachusetts, for like 25,000 damage and some Citadel hits. So you do get battleship-like alpha strike on these guns, and you can get it at range. Once the herd has thinned out, you probably want to look for opportunities to push in and do some brawling, hopefully against enemy cruisers that don't necessarily have torpedoes, such as American ones, or if you're comfortable with turning and using your rudder shift to bait battleship caliber armor piercing into your side armor, then you can effectively brawl against battleships with 15 and 16-inch guns. You just have to be very careful, and it's only going to work best if it's more of a one-on-one situation, or if you have the element of surprise, which you can kind of get with the Siegfried's concealment. I think I said it was 11.1 kilometers. That's definitely better than any battleship you're going to come across, and that concealment is significant because it can give you the drop on ships in terms of ambushing them. So the Siegfried, pretty good ship. I'm definitely going to purchase the Admiralty backing and pick it up, although it is difficult to use and it's kind of a niche ship, definitely not going to be for everybody. Anyway, hope you liked the video. If so, give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing if you haven't already done that. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you next time. Goodbye.